Hey Warrior Saints, glad to have you beautiful people with us today as we begin a new week in which we are going to talk about gifts and how do we utilize our gifts? How do we become stewards? So we hear this word all the time, especially in church circles, stewardship, and that we're all called to be stewards and we need to be stewards. And 9 times out of 10 when we hear that word, our brain immediately goes to money. But we're going to talk about it in a little different light. We're going to talk about it as the real essence of the word, which is that we are called to be stewards, to be people who care for God's gifts. You think about a story like, for example, the wedding at Cana in Galilee. There is the steward of the feast, the one who is responsible for making sure everything is going smoothly. He's kind of like the maitre d' of the house. He's making sure everything is working well, everyone is comfortable, everyone's having a good time, and everything is being managed well. Timelines are working, all of that stuff in modern parlance. We are all called to be stewards as well, and we are called to be stewards over these gifts that God has given us. And with that, it means that we have to manage them well. So today I want to focus specifically on gifts. And I'm going to take from the jumping off point a text from Ephesians chapter 4, where we hear in verse 7 and then 11 through 13, grace was given to each of us according to the measure of Christ's gifts. And then it goes on in verse 11, his gifts were that some should be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors and teachers, to equip the saints for the work of ministry, for building up the body of Christ, until we all attain to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to mature manhood, to the measure of the stature, and here's the key, of the fullness of Christ. There's a lot going on in that verse, in those verses, that I want to break down a little bit with how that's going to help us understand our own stewardship and our own becoming stewards over our gifts that we're given. First off, we all have different gifts. We're all good at different things. We had a meeting last week and it, Father and I were sitting and we were bandying back ideas and going back and forth on stuff. And my mind immediately goes to one place. His mind immediately goes to another place. We're both good at different things. We're good at some of the same things as well. But we have an overarching goal for this project. And we have those different talents that we each possess that we then bring together so that, and here comes the next part, we can build up the body of Christ. St. Paul, after talking about the fact that everyone has different gifts, some are apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, and he goes on. He then lays out what we're called to use those gifts for. To first equip the saints for the work of ministry. So we're called to teach with the gifts that we're given and to teach those gifts that we're given so that we can build up the body of Christ, so we can strengthen the church so that everyone is able to utilize their gifts to the best of their own abilities so that they can get out and do the work. So that, here's the kicker, we all attain to the unity of the faith, knowledge of the Son of God, to mature manhood, to measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. And that Greek word that is used for fullness is really like the completeness, the greatness, pliromatos, that everyone is coming together and everyone is building up all the way through. Kind of like you want to be the whole man, the person that is able to do everything. Luckily, because of the gifts that we have, we're here to help you along that process so that you can be built up as the body of Christ. And you can find that at warriorsaints.org. We're going to continue this process of stewardship for the rest of this week, hopefully, potentially. I don't really know. I just kind of decided that today while I was talking. So I hope Father's good with it too. And we're going to be bandying this back and forth for the rest of the week. And we'll be back tomorrow to do that. And until we see you then, visit us warriorsaints.org. Get yourself the fullness of man, and keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.